Order. We now come to the 10-minute rule bill. TRACY BRABIN.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to require the government to undertake an assessment of any gaps in financial support provided to individuals, businesses and industries over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, to require the government to report to Parliament on steps it intends to take in connection with any such gaps and for connected purposes. So thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, for allowing me the opportunity to propose this bill today. It aims to support those who have been excluded or fallen through the gaps of meaningful support during this pandemic. In preparing my speech for today, I knew I'd be following a recent financial statement from the Chancellor, and I had hoped to be responding to some new initiatives which would have helped some of the people who've been without a penny since March 2020. Sadly, watching the Chancellor once again giving a financial statement without even acknowledging or mentioning the excluded left me and so many others bewildered, angry and upset, which is why today's bill is sadly so necessary. The government must identify the gaps in support and inform this House the steps it's going to take to right this wrong without delay. Thanks to the vaccination programme, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but right now we're still in the grip of the pandemic. Just yesterday, 1,243 people tragically died from the virus. Schools and non-essential businesses are closed, and we've been told if we can, we must stay at home. So many have lost their jobs, so many businesses gone under. For some, the government has stepped in, a financial safety net, but for so many others, our fellow taxpayers, they have been abandoned and left to fend for themselves. And in the words of Manchester's Metro Mayor Andy Burnham, basic fairness demands a solution be found. There are many who agree. During the recall last week, member after member from across the House stood up and requested support for those who've been left out. Incredulously, the Prime Minister said in response, nobody has been excluded. I would ask the Prime Minister to listen to some of these examples and tell them that nobody has been left behind. Kim, a makeup artist, beauty therapist, who's been trading for 9 years, operating from a treatment room in her garden, working around her young family. Tragically, Kim in 2018 lost her husband and was entitled to bereavement allowance. When the pandemic struck, her business had to close. She was denied a local authority grant on the grounds that she operates her business from her garden treatment room. She was deemed ineligible for SAYS because HMRC treats bereavement allowance and the pension payments from her late husband as trade income, and therefore she falls foul of the 50-50 rule, where you must make over 50% of your income from self-employment. But perhaps most cruelly, heartbreakingly, had her partner been alive today, Kim would have received 80% of her business trade profits across the last 3 years with no questions asked. With 2 young children to care for, this has caused stress and anxiety. And I would like to hear the Prime Minister tell Kim nobody has been excluded. Or a woman I call Zoe, who contacted me about her sister, Louise, whose business had to close due to the coronavirus restrictions. The business opened in May 2019, which meant Louise was unable to apply for government support. Her hopes pinned on obtaining a bounce-back loan, which despite applying over a 6-month period, she was denied. Louise's family stepped in, they tried to help where they could, but traumatically, Louise has attempted to commit suicide 3 times in recent months. This is heartbreaking, the effect that the lack of support is having. James, who was made redundant 2019, secured a new job early 2020, only to lose it when COVID hit, as the sites he was due to work on were no longer open. No employer to follow him, he wasn't self-employed, so he fell through the gaps. James started 2020 with savings and a new job to look forward to. He tells me he starts 2021 claiming universal credit, classed as homeless or at risk of homelessness, savings gone, dreams gone, no job, no income from a partner, and going through this alone. Now, James paid taxes and worked all his life and contributed to a state pension for years. Would anyone in this House really disagree that he has been excluded? And I would encourage anyone listening to this today to put themselves in their shoes, the sense of injustice you would feel when you'd done the right thing, gone out, worked hard, paid your taxes, only to be abandoned by this government. Madam Deputy Speaker, there are millions of citizens reaching out for help, only to find, just by nature of how their tax is calculated, they are now left by the wayside. Zero-hour workers in the events industry, they can't get furloughed, now on universal credit, in debt. The PAYE freelancer working in television who paid tax at source, whose work has now dried up due to the lockdown and their last employer won't furlough them. The entrepreneurs who took the jump excitedly became self-employed recently, only to find themselves ineligible for SAYS. Innovators, business people, now desperate and afraid for the future. All of these people from the excluded, a number of distinct groups, include 200,000 newly self-employed, 200,000 self-employed previously earning over 50,000 in profits, 1.1 million who earn less than 50% of their income from self-employment, 300,000 new starters, 100,000 denied furlough, 400,000 PAYE freelancers, 700,000 limited company directors, and nearly 500,000 who have lost out due to maternity, parental or adoption leave. All individuals with the same hopes and dreams as us here in this room. These groups are distinct and a number of solutions will be necessary to provide the support that they deserve. But difficulty or complication is absolutely not a satisfactory excuse for disinterest, denial and lack of action. While the bill I move today calls for the government to report on steps it plans to take to rectify the gaps in support, I'd like to assist the Treasury benches by offering some suggestions that may guide their thinking. While this may sound like a list, each and every suggestion is us trying to find a solution to a human problem, to a historic injustice. Firstly, the newly self-employed could be included in the fourth round of SAYS. Throughout the pandemic, the number of self-employed has been gradually reducing, so it's unlikely the number of claimants would be over 300,000, a simple and very fair measure. Many directors of small and medium-sized businesses were unable to furlough themselves either because it would mean they weren't allowed to do any work at all or that they were ineligible. The Directors' Income Support Scheme could help support company directors. Really important because there will be no meaningful recovery from COVID if there aren't any businesses left standing to employ people. Freelancers, many people who haven't worked this last tax year and received no meaningful financial support, have lived on money put aside to pay their tax. With their tax bills now due, perhaps the Treasury could waive tax for those whose income is less than their tax bill. And Madam Deputy Speaker, it's nothing short of an outrage that self-employed mothers have no ability to discount their maternity leave from SAYS payments. This leaves tens of thousands of women discriminated against and out of pocket. This needs to be changed and backdated without delay. For those who are employees, access to furlough is entirely in the hands of the employer. Those who have been refused have been left destitute. People are increasingly desperate. Only this week I spoke to a man who just sold his house saying, at least we've something left to sell. A one-off taxable grant, while far from comprehensive, could work. A flat payment, which would be administratively simple and secure, that if it pushed them against the income spectrum, the grant could return to the Treasury via the tax system. For them, the excluded, the Treasury could look at taxpayers' targeted support scheme, which would allow people to claim what they would have received in different circumstances. These are just many suggestions that could help. But Treasury must show the political will and instruct their policy experts to find solutions. And with the supermarkets returning £2 billion to Treasury, money already allocated, this could be the ideal time to put those schemes into practice. The coronavirus pandemic has taken so much from us, and the government have provided unprecedented financial support to millions, which is absolutely to be commended. But these schemes were put in at speed, and now we have the bandwidth to attend to the detail and support those left behind. And Madam Deputy Speaker, in drawing my contribution to a close, I'd like to pay tribute to the 3 million excluded who've campaigned and organised in increasingly difficult personal circumstances. No one could have foreseen the pandemic, and they've been left out of meaningful support through no fault of their own. And I hope government and the Treasury understand that it is now the time to right this historic wrong.
The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Paula Barker, Sir Geoffrey M. Dawson, Stephen Farry, Dan Jarvis, Caroline Lucas, John McDonnell, Esther McVeigh, Mr. Virendra Sharma, Jamie Stone, Alison Thewlis,